So we're back with Stephen Gutowski of Washington Free Beacon. Can I see a little? You were playing with the little toy earlier.
I got one of my guns Cerakoted here. This is my Remington R1 Enhanced 1911, and I got it painted up by a shop in North Carolina called Weapon Works.
So what was this? Okay, so how long have you had the gun before you Cerakoted, and then what was the motivation behind getting the Cerakote job done?
You know, this is actually my favorite gun that I own, my favorite handgun. I love 1911s, but I had it for several years before I got it Cerakoted, and the motivation was I wrote a story on the Free Beacon. It's called "Guns as Art," right? Cerakoting my 1911, and it's this sort of new culture that exists out there in the firearms industry, in the firearms community, of taking your basic black guns and sort of putting some very extensive artwork on them. And I think that's something that's come along recently in the last decade or so, where you've seen these really high-end, intricate Cerakote designs.
Yeah,
and so I wanted to go through that process and see what it looked like. So this one's based off of like a P-51 Mustang design, and I think it turned out amazing.
Yeah, I do. From where I'm sitting, it looks pretty damn amazing. I gotta say, I'm one. I love my black guns. I love them.
Sure.
While at the same time, though, I can't lie that there's just something about getting a gun Cerakoted in a certain pattern, a certain color. It just kind of adds a lot to the experience of the firearm. Add some character, some personality to the gun. And you're right. I think there's been a boom and an explosion as of late of like this art form basically coming into its own in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the people doing this kind of work are real artists too, as well.
I agree. I've seen some intricate pieces, man.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's incredible. I mean, this has a lot of detail work on it. That's just so mind-blowing to me. And I've seen other examples out there, even all kinds of crazy stuff based off of just everything, pop culture, military, all kinds of inspirations. And so I just wanted to shine a little bit of light on like what's going on with that in the firearms community, because I don't think a lot of people aren't deep into it, don't know anything about what's going on with Cerakoting and other forms of guns as art.
It's funny. It's like, when we talk about guns from a political standpoint, like with respect to the gun debate, we're always constantly drawing this analysis or analogies between that and cars. And of course, the other side is constantly trying to, undermine that analogy and say, oh, it's not the same thing. I mean, even right down to the culture, it's the same thing. Like I wouldn't be surprised if I came up with a show called "Pimp Your Gun." Like it's, what I mean? It's like you have all these custom shops now. Then you have guns with different variations of the guns, and all of the same kind of basically things that happen in the car world. Are happening in the gun world as well. They're both mechanics. They both use mufflers to quiet themselves. Like it's all of these things that kind of correlate together. And it's amazing how you have one group of people who are constantly trying to deny that to be the case. But even down to the culture, it's undeniable.
No, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of crossover there. But and firearm design alone can be quite beautiful. I mean, the 1911 is a perfect example of that. The industrial design of this gun is sort of transcends its utilitarian purpose, and it's something more than that. And then, when you put a nice paint job on top of it, you get to a whole new level.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that no different than, say, me restoring like a 72 Chevelle. When cars were made a certain way, 1911s were made a certain way, whereas now, cars tend to be largely a bunch of, hi-fi plastics that aren't bad. They work great, they're efficient, but I mean, we can call those the Glocks of the world, the Glocks of the car world, so to speak. But then still being able to have that appreciation for the OGs in the game, which would be like the 1911s. So,
yeah, no, I think that's a very good point.
Yes, sir. So what are the?
So I'll keep it displayed up here with my nice Savoy leather.
That's a detail. Savoy does some good work.
They do.
So, boy, that's some good work. I'll give them that. They're definitely artists in their own right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of artistry going on in the gun industry that a lot of people don't recognize.
Yeah. Only problem is we don't sip champagne and put our guns on walls and have.
Oh, I put my guns on the wall.
Well,
sometimes. Although it comes off right away if I need it. So.
See, functional art, right then and
functional, there.
Yeah. Right. So, what other stories have you been working on that stand out?
Well, the one gun a month thing is not the only thing going on in Virginia. Actually, that's of national relevance, really. Recently, the legislature passed a bill that would allow victims of domestic violence, people who have protective orders against someone, to use that protective order as a temporary concealed carry license. Because in Virginia, the concealed carry license takes 45 days to obtain after you've done the training. Once you apply, the state has 45 days to return a permit to you as long as, if you pass the background check. Mm-hmm. So this bill was designed to allow people who essentially are under threat.
Yeah.
They have a protective order to carry a firearm concealed without having to wait to obtain a permit first.
Wow, that's kind of freaking awesome. I can think of one person who would have definitely benefited from that law. Unfortunately, she was in New Jersey.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of sucks in that sense. But has there been any real pushback?
Yeah, well, so McCall vetoed it, right? So it's not going to go into law at the moment, but there is some hope that his veto might be overridden. They're one vote away in both the House and Senate, as I understand it. And so there's a chance that his veto could be overridden in this case. But interestingly, he wouldn't answer my questions, the governor, about his veto. He gave his reasoning. His reasoning was essentially that when he made the veto, he put out a statement, and the reasoning was, well, it would only make things more dangerous to add a gun to the situation generally, not less dangerous, which I guess the implication there. And then he listed the number of women who've been killed in domestic violence incidents in Virginia with a firearm. And I guess the implication there is that if a woman with a protective order were to get a gun for herself to carry for her protection, somehow her abuser would get the gun, or she would give it.
So basically,
really he didn't explain it.
I mean, there's only two logical conclusions you can make with that. One, he believes that a woman who feels that she's in danger of life should not be allowed to use a firearm to essentially defend herself against somebody she has a restraining order against. Or two, he feels that women are incapable of effectively using guns to protect themselves, and that gun would just be taken from her and turned around and used against her by the very person she's trying to protect herself with. Which then brings me back to my first point again, which is to say that he doesn't believe that a woman who feels threatened by somebody she got a restraining order against should be allowed to use a gun to defend herself with.
Yeah.
It's that type of circular argument that they constantly make, and they don't even realize they're making it. If I were to say something like that, I'd be called a misogynist and anti-woman in that sense. It just doesn't make any sense to me how you can have somebody actually make that point that somebody should not be allowed to carry a firearm after filing a restraining order because it makes the situation more dangerous.
That's what the governor said. Yeah.
Does that mean that if you get this temporary ability to carry a firearm, that somehow the laws of justified use of force don't apply to you anymore?
Right. I contacted his office and I asked if he thinks that women who've been victims of domestic violence should ever have firearms, which they didn't respond to. And then I asked them, well, if not carrying a gun for protection, what is someone who has one of these orders, who's in a life-threatening situation, what does the governor recommend they do, especially if they don't live near a police station?
Yeah, and you got no response.
They didn't respond, so I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I'm acting surprised, but it doesn't surprise me in the slightest because it's a dumb argument to make in the first place on his behalf. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be caught having to defend that either because it's that stupid. Well, really appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure, man. You take care of my 1911 back there. I'll come by and pick that up at some point.
Come out to Virginia, you can shoot it. I'll let you shoot it.
I don't know. I might have to legally traffic it back to Texas.
That's right.
But no, I appreciate it, Stephen, man, and you have a good one.
Thank you.
Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to find out about a new shooting competition that's for ARs and just for women. That's sexist.